welcome back to Malt Muser Whiskey Reviews. I'm Eric on the bar for today. Oban, 18 years old, single malt Scotch. Nose taste finish review. This whiskey is coming your way. I'll tell you a bit about the value, give you my final thoughts, final score, leave you with a malt musing. But first, take a second and smash that subscribe button. Would love to have you on board. Make sure you don't miss these reviews each week. They drop here on YouTube on Fridays. I also have a Tuesday happy hour every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'd love to see you there as well. Oban, 18-year-old whiskey. The Oban distillery located in the Highlands region, but for some, it would be more accurately considered a Western Highlands whiskey coming right on the coast. Oban's a rather small distillery. They're operating just 2 small stills, so they do not put out a ton of whiskey. The distillery itself is part of the Diageo family, and so they do have a distiller's edition that comes out every year, as well as their probably most known 14-year-old single malt. And then they have this 18-year-old single malt, as well as a non-age statement whiskey called the Little Bay. Oban is a lightly peated whiskey. So it does have a little bit of that maritime peat character, more associated with stuff off the Western Islands of Scotland, like Islay, but not nearly as strong or as potent in terms of the peat. So the tail of the tape here on the Oban 18. First of all, this is the tube, the minimalist tube. There's some writing on the back. I defy you to try to read this. It is very, very small print. But from what I've been able to gather, there is nothing written on here about natural color or about chill filtration, so we should assume in classic Diageo fashion they are rather vague and obscure about that. They don't mention anything on the bottle, so we can go ahead and assume that they have added some colorant to this and that this has been chill filtered. It is an 18-year-old whiskey, meaning that the youngest spirit in this bottle is 18 years old, and it is bottled at 43% ABV. So that's the tail of the tape. In terms of the maturation, we really just do not know. It doesn't mention anything on here about what this whiskey has been aged in, but from my best understanding, this is likely just an ex-bourbon cask. So possibility of some sherry, I am not really sure, but they do not, again, say anywhere on the bottle. Maybe a little check on the internet just to make sure. Unfortunately, this is what we have to do sometimes in order to just make sure we know what the whiskeys we're drinking. And yes, I'm correct. It's just American oak cask, so this is just for ex-bourbon cask. Here is that very, very likely unnatural color. You can see that kind of heavy orange glow, usually signifying a bit of E150A colorant in the whiskey. Okay, all of that said, let's dive in. Oban, 18 years old. On the nose. Winston the Whiskey Cat is interested in what we're up to. Nice, pretty rich nose. A lot of lighter fruits, some kind of orange fruit. Oranges, apricots, things like that. It's got a zestiness to it. Maybe a bit of oak, some toffee notes. A little sharpness on the back end, probably coming from that oak spice. But again, it smells rather rich, warming, somewhat subtle. It does have a little sharpness. As for the peat, now I'm going to stress that there is a difference between peat and smoke in a whiskey, in terms of how it shows up in the whiskey itself. This, you can touch a little bit. Does touch a little bit of peat on the nose, but nothing really in the way of smoke. Other than maybe just a slight kind of charcoal note. So all in all, this is a sweet whiskey. Not very delicate. It's a bit more oak, sweet oak. That's kind of what we're getting here. Okay, let's give it a taste. Slanchaba. Hello, Winston. Okay. On this first taste, you really do just get this, again, kind of orange yellow fruits, bit of spice. bit of oak. Let me do one more sip and then we'll talk a little more about it. Okay. It's pretty oily. Arrives a nice kind of, I want to say pretty balanced approach here. At first you get the sweetness and then the oak comes in right behind it. So you kind of got this sweet and oak spice contrast the entire way through here. Notes of orange, like orange marmalade even. Maybe some, again, dried apricot, a little bit of dried fruit, vanilla, toffee, honey. So some very classic kind of bourbon note qualities. There's some apple in here, a lot of actual apple riding along with this, giving it a little bit of a tartness. As it heads into the finish, that oak spice comes in. You get just a little taste of that ashy, earthy peat that's kind of just giving that oak a little more character, but you get more wave of chocolate, orange chocolate going into the finish, which is right around medium long. A little bit of that ash. And then I do have to say it's like riding the line between a slight mint note and an ethanol note just at the end of this whiskey. And I'm not quite sure. I can't quite tease it out, but that is why we add water. We got the Glenmorangie pitcher here. We're going to do like just three tiny drops of water here. On an older whiskey like this, you really don't want to put too much water in. It could easily drown it, as older whiskeys tend to be a bit more delicate. Let's see what happens here with the additional water. It's kicking up that zest, a bit more barley notes now. Lemon lime, bit of saltiness. Yeah, this nose has gotten more interesting with water for sure. Again, the core of this whiskey is really much staying intact. Orange, apple, oak spice, hints of maybe cinnamon, maybe some allspice in here. Okay. The water has toned down the sweetness, turned up the citrus and oak spice on this. It's a much drier finish now. That chocolate is still there. The vanilla note is still there. The slight peat is contributing a bit to the tannic kind of oakiness on the back end of this. Rather nice dark chocolate note kind of riding all the way through here. Cocoa powder, maybe more of like a hot chocolate. Medium, pulls away a little bit quicker here with water. But for the most part, again, you're looking at a sweet oaky whiskey here. Very traditional in the bourbon cask style. Not a lot of surprises coming out of this so far. Okay. Oban 18. This is not, despite what they do say on here, a limited edition whiskey. You can find this pretty much any good liquor shop. You will definitely be able to find the Oban 14. This one might be a little harder to find, but if you do here in the United States, 2022, you're going to be looking at an average price in the $150 range. I have seen prices vary widely on this. I've seen it as low as around 140. I've seen it as high as over 200. So the prices really vary, but for the most part, you are going to be looking at around $150 USD for this. My value score on this is going to be a medium low. So we will be docking at 0.25 on the value. And when we get into final thoughts right now, I will explain why. So here we go. First and foremost, I have a soft spot for the Oban distillery. Oban 14 was the first bottle of single malt that I ever purchased. It was one of these whiskeys that really captured kind of the Highland, quote unquote, Highland style and the more kind of slightly seaside, peated Islay side of things in a very subtle way. It was a really nice introductory bottle to kind of the diversity of single malt Scotch, and I will always hold it fondly. So I had high hopes for this 18. picking this up later in my journey, thinking I would have a much more complex, interesting experience with this 18-year-old whiskey. I personally don't quite find it living up to the expectations that I had placed on it, but I also am not sure it lives quite up to what the MSRP cost is on this. Look, at 43%, this is a fake colored, chill filtered, kind of simple whiskey. And for an 18-year-old, and when you're spending 150 some dollars, I think there's so many other whiskeys out on the market, even ex-bourbon cask for that matter, that might just give you something of a better experience, maybe even at less of a price. I do want to commend despite the chill filtration, this is a pretty rich whiskey. Imagine if they hadn't done the chill filtration, what could have been here. All in all, I think, again, not a whiskey I'll probably buy again. I don't really find it all that interesting. I'm not quite sure who this whiskey is for. If you're a beginner, this is likely outside of the amount of money you're willing to spend on a whiskey. And if you're in that kind of, been drinking single malts for a while, this is probably something you're going to pass up. It just doesn't really bring all that much character, provenance, or interesting notes to the table here. And for that, I'm just going to, give it a solid 2.75 out of 5. For me, a 3 is average. So 2.75 is definitely a try before you buy. If you're going to invest the money that is being asked for this whiskey, you better make damn sure that you really like it, because I do think a lot of folks could buy this thinking that 18 is going to automatically mean it's going to be good. You might end up a little disappointed. So this is in the try before you buy range for me, 2.75 out of 5. I think it might have hit that 3 if it wouldn't have been so expensive, but that's where it stands. That's my score. Leave a comment. Let me know. Do you think I got this right? Have you had the Oban 18 or the Oban 14 for that matter? What's your opinion on their distillery? Something that you buy whiskey from frequently, or are they just kind of a one-off, you try a couple times and then never really go back to? Curious little distillery, that Oban. So 2.75 out of 5. That is my final score here on the Oban 18 years old. With that, I will kick you to your malt musing and see you next time here on Malt Muser Whiskey Reviews. It's much about.